Our webinar this morning is Anticipating the Unexpected, Involving Your Family in Financial Planning and Decision Making. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. My name is Jenna Witherby, and I'm one of the advisors on the team at 401k Plan Professionals. And if you're not familiar with our team, we focus 100% of our time on corporate retirement plans. So serving both the plan sponsors, the administrators that are working with the plans day to day, but also serving the participants and their loved ones that are in the plans, beneficiaries of the plans. And it's important to us to not only provide ongoing education on 401k related matters, but we have this whole webinar series that provides education on various financial topics. We do Social Security, we've had education on health savings accounts, 529 college savings accounts, and a variety of other topics. So this today is a part of our webinar series that we've done for the past several years. And so we've had 12 different webinars this year. And again, variety of different topics. They're typically about 30 minutes or so. Today's will be a little bit longer. You can go to the next slide, please. Today's will be a little bit longer just to allow for Karen to get through all of her great content. And then if you have questions at the end, and it's nice because you'll get a recording of this sent to you afterwards. Feel free to share it with others. And then this recording will also live on our website, on our news and education tab, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. If you have questions throughout, you can drop them in the chat. So we'll be taking a look at that, keeping an eye on it. If you have questions throughout, and we'll definitely pause at the end for questions that people have. Okay, so today's guest presenter is Karen Drancik, and she is the Senior Vice President at Neuberger Berman. She joined the firm in 2006 as a business development advisor with the firm. And previously, she was Regional Vice President and Alternative Investment Specialist at Evergreen Investments. We're very excited that she's here with us today. She has over 20 years of portfolio management and sales experience. And I'm very excited for you to hear from her and just learn from her expertise. Feel free, like I said, to ask her questions. She's very well versed in this topic. So take it away, Karen. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Jenna. Can you guys hear me okay? Just thumbs up. Okay, good. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. We're going to roll through some things that I think kind of dance on the periphery of your investments. It's information that I think is relevant to everyone. I don't care how old you are, how young you are, whether you're married or you're single, or if you have a lot of money, or if you're just starting out saving money. This is something that I think is appropriate for everyone. We are specifically going to talk about walking through your family dynamics and what to expect, especially when you get into your later years. Understanding everything that you have, and specifically what I'm talking about is everything that you may have in your life's work or life's estate. We're going to talk about how to address and update a lot of your life events so that working with a financial advisor becomes even more impactful. And then we're going to talk about creating your own professional team to help your family through various stages of life. So I'm going to get started actually with a little bit of family dynamics. Forgive me, my mouse is a little tricky. For the gentlemen that are on this call, I apologize because this is not very good news for you. On the average, according to the Centers for Disease Control, women are going to outlive, married women, I should say, married women can expect to outlive their husbands, and they can outlive their husbands probably up to 22 years beyond the retirement age of 65. The average life expectancy of a woman today is in her mid-80s. For the men, it's their late 70s and creeping into the early 80s. The good news for the guys is that the gap seems to be closing a little bit. I already mentioned that 70% of married boomer women will survive their husbands. Women are more likely to be single in their golden years. I always say, if you don't believe that, take a stroll through any senior living / nursing home in this country, and you'll find that most of the men there are in very high demand and very well fed. 1 in 4 divorces occur now today. Gray divorces are a big deal. 1 in 4 are actually with people over the age of 50. And this was a shocker to me. The average age of being widowed in this country is only 59 years old. That seems very young to me. At some point in time, 8 in 10 women will be solely responsible for their own or their family's finances. And then only today, 1 in 3 women claim the responsibility for managing the household's finances. That's a very big disconnect. If they're going to end up kind of holding the bag at the end, this begs, the question, why aren't they doing more while their husbands are still around? So the message for me on this slide is that for the gentlemen out there, it's probably a good idea if you start including your wife in some of the investment information. And for the wives that haven't necessarily gotten overly involved, this is your wake-up call. You need to get in the game a little bit. Okay, let's see if I can get this one up. And this story that I'm about to tell is actually going to illustrate what we were just talking about. About 14 years ago, my colleague Sherry Brooks actually met with a financial advisor and a group of women in Southern California. And in the process of that meeting, Sherry was talking about what I was just talking about. And one woman actually raised her hand and she goes, "Can I interrupt for a minute?" She said, "My name is Robin." And she said, "I just want to reiterate everything that this woman is saying. We gals really need to up our game with respect to understanding, what's going on in our households financially." She went ahead and she told her story. She said she was widowed at age 34. She and her husband, her husband owned a business. They had 4 children. They had been to see an estate planning attorney, had their wills and their trust and a buy-sell agreement for her husband's business were drafted, but they weren't signed, so they weren't actually executed. Friday afternoon, the attorney messengers over drafts of the documents for the couple to look over, with the expectation that they would be going into the attorney's office on Monday and signing the originals to put everything into effect. Well, her husband saw them in the dining room when he came home on Friday and said, "Good, we'll take a look at it over the weekend." He got up on Saturday morning, went for a 6:30 in the morning run, and was struck and killed by a drunk driver a mile and a half away from his house. Robin at that point said the worst thing that happened was not the fact that her husband died intestate. She said the worst thing was the fact that she didn't know anything. She didn't know where all their money was. She didn't know how to run her husband's business. She had a vague idea of some of the things that actually went into the estate. She didn't know the family's financial advisor. And she said, in the middle of trying to figure all this out, she was having to grieve, and she was managing the grief of their 4 children. She ended up having to go to work for her husband's business because there was no alternative at that point, something that she had never really planned to do. She had 4 small children. So Robin actually passed out at that meeting a couple of pieces of information that she said that she wished every woman would know before anything were ever to happen to their spouse. And we took that information and we created it into a piece called Anticipating the Unexpected. You all will be getting this digitally. It'll come in an email to you. And what it is a guide to walking you through everything you and your spouse and your family have as a household. The idea behind it is to create, first of all, an emergency file, and then ultimately create that family roadmap so that if anything happens to anyone, the surviving spouse and or adult children will be able to walk in, find everything, know who they're going to call right away, and know what are the pieces in the estate that they're going to have to deal with. I liken it to a roadmap to the paper trail that people leave behind them. And it will include things like the contact information for all of the professionals that your family works with, your financial advisor, your estate planning attorney, your tax professional, if you have one, and if you have a separate insurance agent, that person. My family, we grew up, we had a separate insurance person. I can still remember him to this day. His name was Granville Hearn. The other thing that it'll contain is a lot of paper documentation, your estate planning documents, last will and testament, any trust, whether they are testamentary or whether they're living trust, the titles and deeds, not only to your property, but also to your motorized vehicles. So your car, your boat, your motorcycle, your RV, your ATV, jet skis, whatever you have. Your previous year's tax returns are important because your loved ones, if anything were to happen to you and you die, your loved ones will need to know when was the last time you filed your 1040 for the year. Also paperwork surrounding your marriage and your children. So marriage licenses, birth certificates for spouses and for children. If anyone was in the military, discharge papers become big if someone wants to be buried in a military cemetery. Insurance policies. I cannot stress this enough. If you have life insurance, whether it's through the company that you work with or if you have a separate policy, if your loved ones are to get any kind of benefit from those, meaning if they're going to get a payout from life insurance, they actually have to know that you have the policies. There is no database that they can go to find out if you had any. So the burden of proof is going to be on you, and that's where you can put this information. Also, things like your investment account and your bank statements will let everybody know how many of each that you had, including your 401k plan, I might add. And then I tell everybody, if you don't leave without knowing this one thing, I'll be a happy woman, please, for the love of God, tell someone the 4-digit or the 6-digit code that will unlock your phone, and then the usernames and the passwords that will unlock all of your other electronic devices, because we keep a lot of very valuable information stored on these things, and they want to get that information out really quick. These things should be updated on a regular basis, and then put and kept in a very safe and secure location in your home. They don't necessarily have to go in a safe deposit box because those come with some logistical issues. Somewhere at home, safe, lockbox, lock filing cabinet. I just found out actually that on Amazon, you can buy these fireproof, floodproof bags that you can put this type of information in so your loved ones will know where to go to find it. So now I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to try and go ahead. Hang on 2 seconds. I'm going to walk you through understanding everything that it is that will comprise your estate and kind of give you a good overview of what each of those things are. So one of the first things that if anything were to happen to you, and I say anything were to happen, meaning if you die or if you become incapacitated. I happen to be one of those people that thinks that not being able to handle affairs to a certain degree is a fate worse than death. A lot of people really don't want to give up control of this, but sometimes they have to. And having the person you have named as your agent or your power of attorney would need to know all this information so that they'd know what to take care of you with. And the things that they would take care of you with would be your investments. So in your investments, typically most people have some portion of stocks, some portion of bonds, some portion of cash. And one of the bigger things these days, especially when we start to accumulate a greater level of assets, looking at things like alternative investments, like hedge funds or private equity. Real estate oftentimes is the biggest asset in a lot of families' portfolio, whether it's your home or if it's rental property or commercial property. Annuities also, if you have those, whether it's inside or outside of an investment account, this is something that spouses need to know about because this might be the one thing that will provide some income after somebody dies. Your qualified plans, just like the 401k plan that you have, maybe when you retire, you roll it over into an IRA, or you may have a separate IRA anyway from previously. There are other types of qualified plans too. And then some of you may be lucky enough to have a pension. I actually have two. I was very lucky to have one with Wells Fargo, and I have one at my current employer. So just to make sure that, you know, if you have pensions, they've kind of gone the way of the dodo bird, make sure your loved ones know that you have them. The flip side of that coin is understanding everything that you owe. I read a story many years ago about a woman who was married to a pretty famous musician. They never did give her name. They kept her anonymous. But at the beginning of their marriage, her husband had her sign a document that basically gave control of their finances to their business manager. And so she did that. When her husband divorced her 10 years later, she found out that the business manager had taken out 90% of the debt that they owed as a couple in her name alone. So she was in debt to the tune of $10 million by the time her husband divorced her. She had no clue. So that's why I tell everybody, first and foremost, be aware of everything that you owe, not personally, but together, and check that regularly on a credit report. But the typical things that will show up on that credit report are going to be any mortgages that you have, any personal loans outstanding. Sometimes they're through a bank, sometimes they're just between individuals. Any bank lines of credit, like a home equity loan, or your credit cards. These are the things that will comprise any debt in the estate. And at some point in time, most of them are going to have to be paid off. Okay. Other information is your insurance information. I already mentioned your life insurance, so I'm not going to beat you to death on that one. But a couple of things that I want you to continually stay updated on with respect to life insurance, if you have it, is number one, make sure that your beneficiaries are always current and up to date. It's a pretty easy thing to overlook. I didn't get married till I was 44. My beneficiaries up until that point were always my mom and my dad. And I didn't realize that I hadn't changed them until after I'd been married for several years. So if and when you get married, or if you get divorced, you may want to end up changing those beneficiaries. So keep those current and up to date. Your health insurance, make sure someone else knows who your health insurance is through, especially in the event of incapacity. Your agent is going to want to know where to go for reimbursement of your healthcare claims. Disability is a big one. I know a lot of people that, I've had a disability policy since I first went to work. I was terrified of not being able to pay my own way. So disability, if you have it, is a great thing. Just make sure everybody knows who it's through and where you keep the information on the policy. And then lastly, it's hard for me to gauge the age of everybody that's out there, but long-term care. And I won't get on my soapbox too big, but I will say that the cost of long-term care is only going to continue to go up as the baby boomers get older. It's much cheaper if you buy it relatively young. And if you're older and you have it, I applaud you. Your kids are probably doing the happy dance because they're not going to have to worry about paying out of their pocket to take care of you. But just make sure everybody knows where the policy is, the contract is, and make sure they understand the terms of the contract, whether it puts you in a facility or if you can be taken care of at home, or if there's some of them have a waiting period before the money actually starts paying out. Put those things in a file, and they go together with all of the other things that I just mentioned. Legal documentation. If you have a will, please make sure that this has been updated every 5 years or so, but your last will and testament is going to be typically the document that will tell your loved ones how your estate is going to be distributed. Basically, it's going to tell everybody what they're going to get and when they're going to get it. And if you want to have control over that process, a will is the necessary legal document. Some people say, well, I don't really need a will because I have all my assets designated pay on death or transfer on death, or they're either in joint accounts with rights of survivorship. That's great, but sometimes there are things that fall through the cracks, and a will is a good way to catch some of the stuff that you might not think of. A lot of people will end up needing advanced estate planning, meaning some version of a trust, whether it's a living trust or it's a testamentary trust. Living trust means that at any given time up until your death, you can revoke it and it goes away. Testamentary trusts mean that they will actually fund upon your death. You don't have to do anything while you're living, but everything will pour over and fund upon your death. Some people use trust to manage certain situations in their families, whether they've been divorced or if they have children that are spendthrifts, or, just making sure that the money is going to last for a special needs child. That's what trusts are generally for. They're also a great way of making sure that you don't pay too much money in taxes. Powers of attorney are huge. This is my personal soapbox. I don't care how old you are. If you are an adult, you need to give someone your power of attorney. Basically, it means if anything were to happen to you and you can't handle your financial affairs anymore, or if you can't make medical decisions for yourself, you have designated someone to do that for you, which means that they won't have to go to court to get permission to do that. Going to court basically means you've been subjected to a guardianship. It's public information, meaning anybody can find out what happened to you. And it's expensive because there has to be a reporting to the court every year of what was paid on your behalf. And it's very messy. So I tell everybody, avoid it at all costs, spend the $250 with an attorney and go get a durable power of attorney. And they are effective while you are living, and upon your death, then your will take over and your executor will take over at that point. Other legal documents that you're going to want to put in this file are the documents related to your marriage. So your marriage license, prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, divorce decrees if you're divorced, and any other articles of incorporation for a business, perhaps, but anything related to a privately owned business would go in this legal file. And I would do your kids a favor and staple the business card for both your personal attorney and your business attorney to the top copy of the file. Okay. I mentioned the word executor a few seconds ago. I'm going to send you all another piece of information electronically. And what this is going to be is something called a surviving spouse checklist. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a surviving spouse, but this is something that would go to the person that's going to be named the executor, or some states call it the personal representative for your estate. Essentially, what this will do is tell that person all of the duties that they are going to need to perform as executor to clean up your estate and settle it. And then it will tell them when they need to do those duties. So it is set up on a timeline. As you can see, this shows the first week and the first 2 weeks, the things that that person's going to need to do. And then it will tell them what are the documents and records that they're going to need to get that duty executed. And the file that you are creating for anticipating the unexpected will tell them where that paperwork is located. So that's how the two pieces of information work together very well. Walking through this, I mean, I will give you my advice here on naming an executor for the estate. Probably 9 times out of 10, married couples name each other as executors for the estate. And then once the first spouse dies, typically, if you have children, you look to name your children. If you think that they are financially savvy enough and that they are willing and able to become an executor. If you don't name a child, it might be another family member. One of the other things that is available for people who don't have a family member that they'd want to name, there are such things as corporate fiduciaries. So working with a bank trust department, or a professional fiduciary, somebody that you can hire that is neutral, that will settle your estate for a fee. Don't worry about the fee part, because even a family member that settles an estate is entitled to take a fee. But this is the kind of the process that everybody's going to work through to get an estate settled. Okay, I mentioned about keeping your life updated, so to speak, so that when you have conversations with your financial advisor, those conversations can be more directed at what's going on in your life. For example, we put together this life events checklist that you will also be getting. And I liken this to when you go to the doctor. You know, the first thing you do when you walk in the door is you walk up to the receptionist or the person that's sitting behind the counter, and you're checking in, and they hand you a clipboard. And on that clipboard, they want you to update your medical history. They want you to go through and check off your medications. And then they're basically asking you, why are you here, and why are you talking to the doctor today? Well, this is a similar concept. It's for you to go through and identify any life events that have happened to you since you have been, or since you have talked to your financial advisor. They typically break down into 5 different categories. Household formation events, I call anytime somebody gets married or divorced, anytime you have a child, anytime the children fly the nest and leave home. That, believe me, that's like winning the lottery. Adult children getting divorced means that you may have some estate planning stuff to change. And then the birth of your grandchildren. I just became a grandma for the first time. So you start thinking about helping the kids save for college, etc. That's why those things are significant to a financial advisor. Inheritance events are also big. Anytime you inherit either an IRA from a loved one, or if you inherit life insurance proceeds, or generally just inherit an estate from a loved one, those assets need to be added to your personal ones and to be managed similarly. Career events, anytime anyone gets a job, loses a job, or starts a new business, or happens to fail at a business. Certainly things that the financial advisor can help with. Retirement events, anytime somebody retires, and typically there are things around retirement that advisors can help with. A lot of times people want to downsize when they retire because they don't need the big house anymore with no kids, and they don't want to pay a lot of taxes, and they don't want to pay a big mortgage. Or if they purchase a vacation home somewhere out of state, just as a second place to go. Florida is a big destination for second homes for people who want to get away from the winter and go somewhere warm in the summer. And then you have health and dependency events. Anytime someone in your household becomes either temporarily or permanently disabled, or if you take in a loved one to take care of. A lot of people now are living in what I like to call the sandwich generation. So at the same time they're taking care of their own children, they're also having to take care of their aging parents. And that is a big financial problem to work around, and your advisors need to know about that. And then the other one is anytime someone has a disabled or mentally or physically disabled child, or an adult with a chronic illness, adult child that has a chronic illness. So these are the types of things that your advisor needs to know about. Again, it's kind of like the clipboard. Keep it on hand, check off the boxes that apply, and every time you go in to see that person, bring it with you. Now we're going to talk about creating your own team. And I've already mentioned most of these people. Your financial advisor will be the one who will kind of tie it all together. All of your investments, all of your property, if you will, all of your insurance information. They're pretty full service. They also tend to be a very good source of education about what it is that you actually own. Your accountant or tax professional will be the person that not only just does your 1040, but they can provide some very sound advice on structuring your estate and structuring your finances so that, you know, when it comes down to it and it's left to be transferred to the next generation, you don't owe a significant amount of money to the IRS in terms of estate taxes. Attorneys are come in multiple flavors. Certainly, if you own a business, you're going to need a business attorney. Personally, you will need a personal attorney for, you know, maybe for liability issues, but also for your estate. So an estate tax attorney or an estate planning attorney is someone that you're going to want to add to your roster of professionals eventually. And then any other key professionals, a lot of people today have personal or private bankers that they work with, not just for you know, lending solutions, but sometimes these people also provide investment advice. Divorce attorney, if you've been divorced, keep that person's name handy. Sometimes there are questions that come up with an estate that the divorce attorney needs to be contacted. And like I mentioned before, if you have a private insurance specialist, the name of that person as well. So these people should make up the core of what I like to call your dream team that's involved with your financial life. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second and see if anyone has any questions about what I just went over. I'm more than willing to happy to answer any question that is not overly personal. If it's too personal, we'll direct you to your own attorney. I am not an attorney, by the way, so don't take what I say as gospel. I know enough to make myself dangerous. Always follow up any legal information with your own attorneys. And Jenna, why don't you tell everybody what the QR code is for? You're on mute.
This QR code will direct you to a form. You can basically put in your name and email, and then we'll send over these electronic documents to you. So there's the checklist and some worksheets that are very helpful in basically guiding yourself through all the information that Karen talked about. So definitely, you know, great value adds, and you can use them for yourself, share them with others. So that will just indicate to us that you want those documents. Any questions? I did get one that came through on the registration. Oh, it was just, is it going to be recorded? Yes, then you'll be sent out the recording afterwards as well. And similar to these worksheets and the checklist, you can certainly share the recording. And like I mentioned, that will be out on our social channels as well. If individuals, Karen, have, you know, if they don't know where to turn for these professionals, you know, how do I find an advisor, or how do I find a CPA? Do you have any sort of general recommendation there?
Okay, for the younger folks, I always say the best source of information would be your mom and your dad. If mom and dad have a financial advisor that they like, you can certainly, you know, reach out to that person. I will tell you, a lot of times, if that's done, they can do what they call householding of accounts, and you may end up with not having to pay too much in terms of fees for managing your assets. For most people, for most younger people, I think their 401k plans are their biggest way to save their money and put it into investments. And again, I would reach out to your plan sponsor for information on investments. Also reach out to, if you have an attorney, they can point you in the right direction to a financial advisor. I mean, good old Google. You can Google your local area. Just make sure you're either looking for someone that has, a Series 7 license. Some people have more complicated issues and would need to deal with what I like to call a financial planner. Someone who has a CFP designation might be very helpful when you're looking.
Yes, and we can guide people too. So if you're, one of our clients, and we have some contacts as well, so we can. Okay, so there was one more. What's the burn rate you are using in today's inflationary times for people to spend down on their retirement savings?
Oh, yeah, I'm not the person to ask for that. I don't run the money. So I would say that is a question that you need to ask your financial advisor.
Any other questions? Okay. On the next slide, I have a couple of places where I mentioned you can find resources. So on our website, 401kplanprofessionals.com, there's a tab called News and Education, and that has all of our past webinars, and our financial wellness series is out there, and just really a lot of great resources, or like even short FAQ videos that we've created just in-house. And same with our YouTube channel. I know it may seem silly, why do 401k advisors have a YouTube channel? But this is just another avenue for us to communicate and educate. And you can subscribe to our channel. That way you do get a notification every time we have a new monthly webinar or some sort of a video out there. Okay, so we have some upcoming webinars that I wanted to tell you about. On December 7th, Gina Buckholz on my team, she's doing a Secure 2.0 legislative update. So in our 401k world, there's a lot of changes and enhancements really that 401k plan sponsors can adopt. And there's some changes as well in the IRA space. So she did a Secure 2.0 webinar earlier this year. This is the second one this year with kind of just some refreshed information and guidance as it has come out this year. And she'll walk through some of the main provisions and things you might see. And then January 18th, this is one of our more popular webinars of the year. It'll be our 2024 retirement planning considerations and market update webinar. So you can register for either one or both of those out on our website. So this QR will take you there to the registration area, and you'll see all of our upcoming webinars. And I always tell people too, even if you can't join it live, you'll still get that recording afterwards. So it's still important that you register. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen, for all of this great information. It's so important. And we really like getting the word out there. Certainly, anybody, if you think of questions, feel free to reach out to our team. More than happy to answer your question or at least point you in the right direction. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.